Released in 2006 and developed by Late Clover Studio, Okami is one of the biggest examples I can think of a game that started out obscure and niche, and then became much more popular over time. It would get multiple ports, its main character would appear in other games, and these days, it's far from being considered obscure. Okami has grown to be a popular game despite its initial rough start, and there's a good reason for that, so let's take a look at it. Starting the game, you'll hear the tale of the 8-headed monster Orochi, who terrorized the land of Nippon until it was defeated by the warrior Nagi and a mysterious white wolf. Years later, Orochi is revived, spreading darkness across the land, and you'll take on the role of the sun goddess Amaterasu, incarnating as the White Wolf of legend. You'll team up together with the tiny artist Issen on a quest to defeat Orochi, and that's mostly it in terms of Okami's plot. Well, kind of. I'll get to that later. The story is pretty simple, all things considered, but it's brought to life by its characters. A memorable one being Tizano, a descendant of Nagi who isn't much of a hero, but goes on a journey of self-discovery alongside your quest. There's also Waka, a mysterious prophet who you frequently run into as they provide advice and seem to know more than they let on. Besides the major characters, the supporting cast are all generally well done. Okami is heavily inspired by Japanese folklore. There are a lot of references and nods you can find if you're familiar with it. While I wouldn't say Okami's overall plot is anything special, its characters and individual moments, both major and minor, are where the charm lies. The writing here can run the gambit of tones. As one would think from the grandness of the setup, Okami has its share of dramatic moments, but despite that, the game also has a very big sense of humor. There's a lot of funny moments, some of which come from the fact that despite being a silent protagonist, Amaterasu has a lot of character. They make her very expressive despite being a wolf. When talking needs done though, that's when Issen comes into play, and while he's not my favorite, he has his moments. But frankly, Okami isn't known for its writing, but rather its presentation. Getting the obvious out of the way, Okami is an art style like no other, made to resemble Japanese watercolor and woodblock art. The game looks as if it was painted, with everything being made from brushstrokes. It's a very striking style that can work absolutely wonderfully at times. Everything is stylish, including the small touches like how enemies are introduced with detailed artwork. I'll also mention the well-done music, which uses a lot of traditional Japanese instruments to complement the art style and setting. Much like the game's writing, the soundtrack covers a lot of tones, and they're all pretty good tracks. The voice acting will be hit or miss depending on the person, as instead of actual words, the characters talk using distorted gibberish, but I think it works well enough at helping you imagine what everyone sounds like. A great presentation does not a good game make, and Okami also has some pretty decent gameplay. Okami is heavily classified as a 3D Zelda clone for good reason, as its gameplay is pretty comparable to that series. You'll find yourself journeying across various overworlds, cleansing them as you go by building these trees that show off a beautiful cutscene when you do of nature being restored. Afterwards, you'll find people to talk to, animals to feed, and perhaps a dungeon or town to explore. The big feature of Okami is the Celestial Brush. At basically any point, you can pause and paint something using this brush to have a desired effect. This could be cutting things in the environment, blooming local trees, making bombs to blow stuff up, or a whole variety of things by the end of the game. You get new powers by finding celestial brush spirits based on the Chinese zodiac, who are paced fairly well throughout the game. You'll typically find them in a dungeon where they act as the main puzzle solution for that area. I really like how the celestial brush is used throughout the game, as early powers are still useful later on, and the brush techniques are useful in both puzzle solving and combat. The combat itself is fine overall. As you wander around, you'll encounter these scrolls that will trigger a battle on contact, locking you in an arena where you have to fight off various demons through a combination of mashing the attack button and using the celestial brush. Unfortunately, it doesn't really get much more complex than that outside of boss battles. There are 3 different weapon types to use as main or sub-weapons, with the reflector acting as a balanced weapon and incredibly overpowered shield, the rosary as a longer ranged multi-hit weapon or ranged option, as well as my personal favorite, and eventually you can get a heavy-hitting sword, though I find it a little weird how comparably late in the game you get it. I think by the time you get your first sword-type weapon, you'll have 3 reflectors and 2 rosaries. I do like how the celestial brush is used though. Some enemies have specific weaknesses related to it, but you can also use it to open up an enemy's guard or drop a bomb on them. While combat is simple, you do actually have options. I think the bosses are pretty fun though. This is when Okami can combine its puzzle elements into its combat. It provides you with something a bit more challenging and epic feeling. Definitely some of the most memorable parts of the game. combat is in service to gain some of Okami's currencies, mainly money, which can be spent on various consumable items or animal feed. You can also obtain demon faints by doing certain actions against enemies, which can be exchanged for special key items. Now in terms of consumable items, Okami kind of overcompensates. Maybe it's just me, but I found Okami to be easy enough where I never had to use any. This game gives you healing items, items to damage everything around you, items to make you invincible, and more. I went through the entire game without really needing them. Even if you were to die, by collecting enough food to fill up a celestial pouch, you'd get a free revive, and you can upgrade yourself to have more than one. It's really easy to get a lot of money too, as you'll constantly find chests with treasures that sell for a lot. Now there are expensive things to spend money on, such as the occasional new weapon or new moves which you can learn at the dojo, allowing you to have longer attack streams and such. It's just really easy to trivialize the game. The other form of currency in this game is praise. This is the people's worship for you, which you can spend to upgrade your stats, giving you more health or increasing how much ink you have for your celestial brush. You can get praise by feeding animals, ballooning all the withered trees you find, or completing side quests for people. Some of the side quests can even result in some pretty good rewards, or provide you with one of the collectible beads, of which there are 100, and they unlock something good for New Game Plus. Overall, I'd say I like the gameplay, more so the exploration and puzzle solving than the combat. But hey, since the enemies are on the map, you can just avoid them if you'd rather not fight. So what does Okami do wrong? Well, honestly, its biggest fault is probably its story, or at least its pacing. Now the story isn't bad, but minor spoilers. Even though Rochi is built up to be the main antagonist, they're actually defeated around a third of the way in, with the game just continuing past them. It's a little weird because it almost feels like the game could have ended there without issue. But yeah, the game just keeps going. And when you beat the game and look back, the structure of the overall narrative makes a bit more sense, but it feels like it could have been handled better. Also as mentioned, the game is maybe too easy for its own good. While bosses certainly feel epic from the presentation, in terms of actual threat, they're a bit lower. But at the same time, I feel like this game is easy to recommend due to its ease of entry. Okami's been remembered fondly and continuously remastered for good reason. The characters are charming, the world and music are beautiful, and the gameplay is simple but fun enough for everyone to enjoy. Okami would actually get a sequel in Okami Den on the DS, and while I haven't played it, I'm told it's fairly decent. So if you want something nice to scratch that Zelda itch, or just a beautiful game with remarkable presentation, go play Okami. If you enjoyed the video, consider leaving a like or comment. If you want to hear about more underappreciated games, subscribe to my channel for more content.